You're listening to the RPM Podcast.
Listen to it with your ear holes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the RPM Podcast, episode 136. I can't believe we've been doing this for that long. It's great to be back on an actual episode after we just wrapped up our stint at River Rock Restaurant and Marina Bar yesterday for the Geico 500. And we have the traditional cast of characters with us. So we'll start it out with driver the number 09, a Riggleman Towing Factory stock at Wall Stadium Speedway, Scott Riggleman. Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. 2 shows in a row, man. That's pretty cool. And Eric showed up to 2 shows in a row. We're doing great here.
2 days in a row.
We're trying to start a new streak because this show does mean a lot to me. And me and Josh kissed and made up, so I think everything's okay.
Yeah, but that never lasts long.
So, from a distance.
He used tongue.
So, exactly. We also have the other Riggleman, the voice Riggleman, and I'm talking about spotter Timmy Riggleman, who is also with us here today. Timmy, what's up, man?
Oh, ready to go. Talk about some more racing.
And we got a lot to talk about, and we're going to get into all of it. And we also have the producer of the RPM podcast and the guy who is really the bare bones and muscle of the River Rock production that was put on yesterday, Josh Matthews. What's up, Josh?
My feet are wet.
So, you and me both, Junior. And we also have joining us tonight, and we're going to get into a little bit of discussion about what he has coming up, another member of the famed Flores family at Wall Stadium Speedway, Kevin Flores. Kevin, how's it going, man?
Going great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for being with us. And before we get into it, I asked guys if I could do something really quick. A while ago when we got our dog, Chase, he jumped up on my lap and he got a little bit of airtime. This is our buddy Sam. For those of you watching on YouTube, Sam is the sweetest little dude ever. He doesn't like being held. He's a little bit cranky. But Sam's really sick, and he's going to be crossing that Rainbow Bridge rather soon. And I just wanted to give him a moment to have his airtime. He's a sweetheart. My fiance adopted him before we met, and I love him just like he's my own, and I didn't want his brother to get all the fame on the RPM podcast since this show means so much to me. I want to give Sam a moment too. So him and I are going to cuddle a little bit later, but for those of you who got to see Sam, I'm happy about it. And now we can talk about some racing. That was just a personal thing I wanted to do, so thank you guys for giving me that moment.
It's a sweet dog. Sweet dog.
Oh, he's adorable. He's the man. So he's gonna go run around into a few things and then go lay down, I'm sure. But speaking of running into things, we're going to talk about Talladega in a moment. But since we have Kevin Flores on, we want to give him the opportunity to talk about some things that are coming up. Now, the Flores name's been around Wall Stadium Speedway for quite some time. In fact, we talk about Ryan all the time. In fact, Ryan has been probably one of we could probably research this, probably he's probably been the guest we've had on the most times, I should say. So now we got Kevin on to give him a little bit of a run for his money. First of all, Kevin, what do you got going on? I know Scott dropped a couple of hints as that we may see you back in a car. We've seen you race before, even recently in the factory stock not that long ago at some of the big races we've had. What do you got going on? You've been around the track? I mean, obviously I haven't been there. Have you been at Wall so far this season? Coming back? You got plans?
Saturday. He was actually there Saturday and showed up with a brand new car. Can you tell us a little bit about that car, Kevin?
Yep, brand new car. It was 2 years in the making. Had tons of help. And, finally got to bring it to the track this Saturday. I had a blast. The car ran great. Had no problems with it. We didn't even put anything in it. No lead. Didn't put it on the scales. Just kind of threw it together and ran it out there and came home with a 14th place finish. And it was great. Couldn't ask for a better night.
And you kind of snuck in on us too, because, the Flores family's pretty famous for the number 15 number. You run the 15 number in the Enduros. And when you pulled in, I seen this brown car with a yellow 86 on the side. And I had no clue who it was. And I'm like, man, who's that? And then I seen you buy the car. I'm like, wow, that must be Kevin's new car. Because I remember seeing that over at your shop where you run space over there with Steve West and the guys. And I remember your cage was yellow. I remember you painting the yellow cage, and I saw the yellow cage. I'm like, oh, that's Kevin's new car. He finally got it done. Can you tell us a little bit why you went with the number 86?
86 is the year of my birth. 1986.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's really cool when people have a connection to why they run a number, so that's a good idea.
I couldn't really think of any number, so I went with that. And I got 15 on the Enduro car because I bought that car from Marco, and I got to give a big shout out and thank you to him because he gave me the first ride in that. He actually set that car up to run Turkey Derby the year I did, but he got sick. So I bought the car from him and ran at that Turkey Derby, and I was hooked instantly. And I quickly learned that car was not meant for Wall Stadium.
Right.
And had a blast running Enduros with it at Bridgeport on the quarter mile with you. And then also this recent Big Diamond race that we had, that was a blast. And every race I've ever been in, you've been in as well, Scott. So there's something.
Yeah, I really like racing with you. And just real quick, I just want to mention the Flores family themselves. They've been around Wall Stadium forever. I mean, it starts right with Kevin's mom, Candy Flores. She's like the hugest racer in the world. She never misses a race. She was mainly there because Kevin's older brother, Keith, which is also, of course, Candy's son, he raced for many, many years in street stock. So she would go there. But even when Keith stopped racing Wall Stadium, she would still go. She was still there all the time, and she would still come in the pit.
She had so many friends there.
Right.
Absolutely.
And Kevin's father, John Flores, also known as Wolfie. Everybody knows Wolfie around the racetrack. He's been around there for years. Like I said, his brother Keith raced for years. He's also a great fabricator, very, very talented. He can also paint. He can build a car from the ground up.
Yes, sir.
He also has another brother named Eric Flores, who learned a lot by working with his brother Keith in fabricating. He's also a great fabricator. He's been a pit crew on many, many years on the modified tour with Rowan Pennick. And then we have the oldest brother.
I got lucky with Eric. Quick with Eric. He just kind of retired because Rowan did. So
right.
I got lucky and stole him, and he was a huge help building the whole car, putting all the bars in, and really helped me throw it all together. He did the whole. Well, the cage itself was a kit from All Star. And Marco and Shannon put it together, and then Rich and Shannon helped me with the down bars and all that stuff, and then Eric did all the rest of it up until hanging the body, where Marco came back in and he built me some Nerf bars. And then I got a shout out to Darren Cox. He helped me bend some rear Nerf bars. And
that's awesome. You just listen.
Really, I got to give a big, huge shout out. I could not have done this at all without the bald midget with a heart of gold. That's Mr. AJ Slideways. And his dad, Chucky, Mr. Chuck Childress himself. I call him Edmund Headers. He came in at the end and really helped me get the car finished and out on the track. And the advice that he gave me was really second to none. He knows everything about that track, and his knowledge and his help is forever grateful.
And I also noticed Saturday night at the track, Chuck was over in your pits helping you all night long with the car.
Yeah, he was just totally the best. I couldn't ask for anything better, man.
Now you just rattled off a whole lot of names who helped you with that car. One name missing was Scooter Flores, the oldest brother of the Flores clan. Scooter never goes over there and helps you wrench on the car?
Scooter's always there in spirit. He was there Saturday. I don't know if he
I know. I heard he made his
he snuck
return
in
to Wall Stadium.
Yep.
He had to drop me off from Stafford, so he went in.
Yeah, he's a busy man, that Scooter, but we all love him.
Scooter's the only guy I know been going racing on the modified tour for 29 years and hasn't done anything the whole time he's been there.
He complains all the time.
Scooter does drive me to the races, so thank you, Scooter.
I just want to clear something up with you, Kevin. You're one of, 10 brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I'm number 8.
You're number 8. He comes from a very, very large family. You grew up.
I got to thank Mom and Dad for that. They didn't stop at 7.
I always loved Candy Flores and Wolfie. I think they were great parents. I remember when I was a kid, I think it was one of your brothers played football. I think it was actually Eric that played football.
Eric, yep.
And one day I always seen Wolfie and Candy together. They were always in the grandstands together. Well, one day I walked up there and Wolfie was up there, but Candy wasn't. And it was odd not to see Candy at the racetrack. So I got a little nervous that maybe Candy was sick and not feeling well. So I said, Wolfie, where's your wife at? Is everything all right? He's like, oh, yeah. Eric's got a football game today. We always make sure one of the parents are at each of our kids' sporting events. So they kind of split up that day. Candy went to a football game where Eric was playing, and Wolfie was at the track because Keith was there racing. They're a very close family, and I thought that was pretty cool,
It would get hectic when we were younger with all the games. A lot of miles, a lot of gas.
So how many brothers is it and how many sisters?
I got 4 brothers and 5 sisters. So it's 5 and 5.
Big family, man. Plus, Scooter always had dogs. Scooter was like a pit bull guy. He was always not a pit bull, a Rottweiler. Yeah, Rottweiler. I mean, it was just a very, very large family, and they had pets, and it's a great racing family.
I also got to make sure I say thank you to Ryan because Ryan's helped me out a ton. He's been huge in the support department too. Always make sure he calls and checks up on me. I know he's busy with a lot of different things, but he always makes sure he helps me out, sends me gear, gives me phone calls.
That's the next thing I'm getting to. It doesn't stop with your immediate family, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your uncle, and your...
Yeah, Marco, he's the OG. He started this all, man.
Yeah, he did. He did. Marco really did start it all. And it kind of started by Marco hanging out with the Osborns. You know, the Flores.
Absolutely. And the Monjos.
And so, yeah, it doesn't start with your immediate family. You also have your Uncle Marco and your cousin Ryan Flores, who's a great guest with us on the RPM podcast. Like Eric says, he comes on all the time with us. And keeps us
super celebrity.
Yeah, he keeps us updated on what's going on down south. And I did notice he always made sure you were safe in your race car because he always make sure you had a good, safe seat in your race car. Yep. So, yeah, it's great that you have such a great race. And it's great that you're continuing with the racing. You know what I'm saying?
I'm hooked, man.
Yeah, you're hooked now. Keith kind of got out of the race and started building cars. Now he's fabricating other stuff. He's kind of out of the racing altogether. Like you said, Eric was very involved in racing.
He got abducted by aliens. I haven't seen that
I actually towed a car for Keith the other day. He's doing fine. He's just staying away from the racing. Eric, like you said, Eric has been involved in racing for a long time, but he was pretty much Rowan Pennick's right-hand man. And with Rowan Pennick retiring.
Yeah, he was with him from day one, I think.
From day one.
In the modified game.
Yeah, so with Rowan retiring now, Eric's kind of out of it. So it's good that Kevin's still involved, keeping the Flores name in this area going, you know. And like you said, Marco did it. And a lot of people don't know this about Scooter, but I remember Scooter actually driving. Scooter used to race Enduros at Mahoney Valley Speedway. And I remember one day I showed up to the track at Wall Stadium for practice. And I remember walking up to the track and seeing Marco had a truck at one time that they raced in the Wall Stadium truck division. And I went up to the stands and I was watching Marco's truck around the track and the thing was flying. It was running really good. Then I looked over and Marco was sitting a couple rows down from me. Like, who's driving that truck? And then when it pulled in, Scooter actually got out of it. Scooter was out there
on the pedal.
Yeah. Scooter was out there at Wall Stadium and he was turning some pretty good laps with that. So Scooter was a pretty good driver, but he just didn't choose the driver route. He was more of a crew guy all the time, you know.
I've been with my girlfriend for 15 years. We have 2 kids, and her first ever time at Wall Stadium was when Scooter raced that truck, and she had a blast.
Oh, great. Yeah. I wish Scooter would have did some more driving, but he liked hanging out. He liked being part of the crew. I don't think you know, the only bad part about when you want to be the driver, it's when you really got to start spending a lot of money. And we all know Scooter doesn't like spending a lot of money. So.
He likes lottery tickets. He likes buying lottery tickets.
So Kevin, now that your factory stock's done, are you shelving the Enduro car? Or are you still going to do some dirt racing?
No, I'm going to do any dirt racing I can for sure. Except I guess this Saturday, or not this Saturday. What is it? Next Saturday, there's the race at Bridgeport, right?
Right.
On the 3/8 mile. I'm going to obviously choose the factory stock over that because I have more money invested in that. And
right. Well, me and Nancy are in the same boat. But Kevin, I don't know if you're aware, but they actually have practice that Friday also on the 3/8 mile.
Oh no, I don't know. I'll try to make that. That would be fun.
So me and Nancy are actually going to take our dirt cars there Friday, and then of course we're going to have to be at Wall Stadium on Saturday. But they do have a Saturday night race on Memorial Day weekend at Bridgeport on the 3/8 mile when we're racing. While we're factory stocks are off at Wall Stadium, so you'll be able to make that one as well.
Okay. How great are the Old Bridge Outlaw boys, Lee Allen, Derek Jones, and Rockstar? Lee Allen was there, and with Derek, the first time I ever went and raced with that 39 car I got from Art Avery, and he gave me so much confidence. Yeah, the green car. He gave me so much confidence.
We've had Lee on the show before on the RPM podcast, and he's the reason I'm racing dirt.
He's such a good guy, always willing to help, and gives you so much knowledge, and just a good guy. And I don't know what he's doing hanging out with that jokester Rockstar.
And to show you how crazy Lee Allen is, he actually gave Josh Matthews a ride one time.
There you go. See,
a couple times.
He's got confidence in guys like us.
Crazy, but Josh Matthews drive his car. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he did get Rockstar in the race, and Rockstar's a little confused with racing, though. I mean,
yeah, he doesn't know what to do ever.
Yeah, he doesn't know if he's going dirt racing or asphalt racing or asphalt racing or dirt racing.
That's why I hang out with him. He makes me feel smarter.
Hey, Josh.
Yo.
We know Scott's going to be at the dirt track on Friday. We should bring your factory stock over to his house and put it in front of his driveway on Friday night, so he has to move it Saturday to get his other cars out.
Yeah, maybe that. Well, what else do I need to leave there? A wad of cash or something for him? Or?
No, he's got plenty of that. Don't worry about that.
Real quick, Kevin, I did stop by your pit area to check on you, make sure everything was going well, and I noticed that you had a Skip's racing engine in it. Can you tell us a little bit about the motor and the reason why you picked Skip to be your engine builder?
Yeah, Skip's the man. I really like that guy up. I can't thank him enough for everything he did for me. I actually met him through Marco and Glenn Osborne. I was out at Blewitz the one day, and he just got done building Ryan's 4-cylinder engine, and I was looking for a cheaper alternative to Mr. Martino, who seems to have cornered the market over at Wall Stadium. And I got to talking with him, and he was able to work with me and be flexible. And from whatever I always heard, he built big power, and I brought that thing to the track on Saturday, and that thing was definitely not short on power. And
I've known Skip for many, many years. They used to have a shop called CMS right on Route 9 across from the old Regent Diner. As a matter of fact, Ryan, Kevin, the motor that's in my dirt car right now, Skip actually did the machine work on that engine block probably back in 1991. That's how old that engine is. And I used to use Skip too for machine work. I always had my uncle own Mr. Buck and everything, but Skip could do the boring and the decking on the block that we didn't have machines to do. And we used to bring a lot of work over to Skip.
He did the boring. Sorry.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Skip is a good guy. He's a great guy.
He's another one that's been around racing forever. He's definitely a behind the scenes guy. He's not up front. He doesn't want recognition or fame or anything like that, but he's willing to help anybody.
And all I've ever heard is that he builds big power, and I can attest to that just from one night.
He does move around from engine shop to engine shop. He was working out like Bedford or Medford or something for a while. What's he working out of now?
When I picked the engine up, he was what's the name of the '74 Sportsman kid?
Chris LeRae.
Yeah, he was working out of his shop. I'm not sure what town that was in.
Yeah, that's down in Waretown, down by that's Shore Metric Auto Repair. I used to know for Chris LeRae is actually the father. Jonathan LeRae is actually the driver, but they own a Shore Metric.
Yeah, I met both of them, and they were both really nice guys as well.
Oh, super nice people. Super nice people. They got a great business down there. So Skip's working out of their shop now.
When I picked the motor up in, what was that, February? I may have picked it up. Maybe March. He was down there, so I'm not sure what he's up to now. But yeah, great guy. I can't thank him enough as well for that big power.
It was full. It was cool. I got to spend about 10 minutes with you at the track, and when he had his hood open, he had these beautiful valve covers on his motor. Actual beautiful $1 million valve covers on there. And the big joke was, you bought 2 expensive valve covers, and that's why they're leaking right now.
Yep, exactly. Yep, they had
I said if you would have bought a $50 pair of old valve covers, they wouldn't be leaking right now. So,
Well,
did you get it to seal up for the feature?
Oh yeah, for sure. We put that Teflon tape on; it was good to go.
All right, awesome.
I was going to say, I love how, because I know O'Shea uses Martino, but he has those Hutter stickers on the valve covers.
Yeah.
So maybe you should start doing that. Just
another one I say before we let Kevin get off. He's actually at his race shop now, working on his race car. Kevin, when last week, opening night, we asked Josh, what was the best appearing factory stock he saw there, and he picked the number 11 car, the white and red black Malibu.
Sean Wall,
ounce car. He picked that car as the best appearing. I said, Josh, you might want to change your mind about the best appearing car now, because Kevin Flores came pulling in with a car with a yellow chassis and a brown body and big yellow numbers. And the first thing I said that thing looks like a UPS truck, man. But it was
the Dale Jarrett Deerview car.
Yeah, and that's why I thought maybe
it looked like that kind of by mistake, by default somehow.
Yeah,
because I didn't have enough. It was kind of like a rush job to throw it all together, and there's no graphics or sponsors or anything. So we had these just big yellow numbers and slapped it on. And we're like, let's go.
But then when I walked over and I was talking to you, said, I didn't get a chance to paint it yet. I looked at it. I'm like, don't change a thing. This car looks awesome, man.
Oh, no, I'm just same color, but I'm just going to get a little, I got to put another coat or two on it. It was a rush job to get it out there.
Okay, I thought that was like a brown primer or something you're going to paint.
No, that's dark brown Rust-Oleum.
Is it? It looks so cool. And that's why I asked you earlier why why the number 86. I thought maybe you were going for like a Dale Jarrett tribute UPS car, and you wanted the number 88,
it
but
just
you
kind
couldn't
of
get it.
ended up like that. Now it's like a joke.
Okay, yeah, because I thought maybe you were asking for the 88 someone had, so you took the closest number to 6. You know what I'm saying?
It just kind of ended up like that.
It's also no. I saw that car and just caught my eye. I said that car looks so cool.
The yellow cage looks cool. I think no matter what, you don't really see many yellow cages, and you can really see all the bars from the track or from the stands.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think it looks cool.
It definitely had the old school look to it. It looked like a true factory stock. You know what I mean? Like it looked it's
back when they started.
To me, that's exactly what a factory stock should look like.
That's what I was talking to Ryan today, actually, and I was telling him how I need to paint it a little bit. He's like, "What are you talking about? Why you got to paint it?" I was like, "Yeah, it's good from afar, but far from good." He's like, "That's every factory stock. Don't touch it. It looks awesome."
We'll get with Sam Ballard, and maybe he can design you, one of your sponsors things to fit the UPS logo or something like that. We'll slap it.
There you go. We've been calling it the Rotten Banana over at the shop.
I gotta tell Gary that.
In our pit area, we're definitely called the UPS truck. We're like, there's the UPS truck, man.
Okay, I'm going to get a sticker that said, "Look what Brown did for me."
It's definitely a cool race car, and we wish you well with it.
So you
plan on
racing to be out there racing with you.
It's great.
So you plan on racing?
I got to send one more shout out. Make sure I say thank you and I love you to my beautiful girlfriend Grania and my kids. Without them being so supportive and cool with this, a lot of nights at the shop where you don't get home till late, and a lot of money that goes into it. So definitely our savings is a little less than it would be if I didn't get hooked into racing, but she's been super supportive and can't thank her enough as well.
So was your mom Candy in the grandstand Saturday night?
No, she was actually in Mexico.
Really?
Yeah, she's fancy and goes on Acapulco vacations and whatnot now.
Is she excited that you're back at racing at Wall Stadium now?
Oh my God, she's pumped for sure.
That's great, man. That's great.
Do you have any sponsors you want to thank?
Absolutely. Number one sponsor is Mr. Kenny Van Wickle because he's the man. And
I think the Van Wickles sponsor everybody there. All you got to do is walk in there and need parts for race cars.
It's a wise tip to anyone racing to get someone who owns an auto parts store as a sponsor.
Right.
And also my boss, Bill, over at Good Mowing. Anyone needs any kind of landscaping services, that's Good Mowing. Also, we have Good Tree Service. So if you need any trees, call them up. And also Steve West. Can't do it without him. I got my car over at his shop, and he's giving me tons of parts because he recently retired. So he had a bunch of parts laying around that he's hooked me up with. He's got Total Pipe sponsoring me, so him as well. And I think that's it for my sponsors. But,
now, Kevin, you are a landscaper by trade, right?
Yes, sir.
I know. It's kind of a tough deal for you because, I mean, your busy season is also racing season. How do you juggle your time between work and the race car?
It's tough for sure, but luckily I got a cool boss, and he lets me work around the racing schedule sometimes, and sometimes I got to kind of work over racing. I've done that before, so it's kind of a thing you got to balance.
Now, do you have to work Saturday?
I picked a really bad time to start racing when I had 2 kids and I bought a house. But what was that, Scott? Sorry.
Do you actually go to work on a Saturday morning before you go to the racetrack?
Sometimes I'll work till noon, depending on, like this past Saturday I didn't because I had a lot to do. But if everything's all taken care of and I get everything all wrapped up Friday, then I'll work until 12. I'll get all the guys set up because I'm a foreman over there, and I'll get all the guys set up, make sure everything's rolling good, and then I can split out early. So that helps a lot too. So that's why I definitely got to thank Bill over at Good Mowing for that.
Now, I know you just started racing, but what track would you like to race at that you haven't so far?
Geez. I don't really even think about that. All the track I ever wanted to race my whole life.
Just go big and say Daytona.
Yeah, well, you know what? This guy at work actually hooked me up with one of those Pocono drives. So you can do like 30 miles on Pocono.
Go do it, man. It's awesome.
He won it in some contest, and he's like, I'm never going to use it. Here you go. So I got that, awesome. And I'm looking forward to that. But any track I ever wanted to race was just Wall Stadium, and I'm getting to do that now. I grew up there. When I was younger, we used to sit in the parking lot and wait for the modifieds to end so we could get in for free to watch the street stock. And they've just I've been addicted to street stocks my whole life, and I'm just so lucky that I get to do it now.
Scooter still does that. Sits in the parking lot, waits for it to be free.
With modern technology, he just gets someone to live stream it for him or something.
He just texts me all night. What's going on, boy?
Yep.
And Kevin, I just want to tell you, you are one of the racers that I truly like because you always have a smile on your face. You're one of the racers that just
That's the best.
yeah, you're just happy that you're there and you're able to go down on that racetrack and race. And that's the way every racer should be when they get over there. And
Every aspect of it. I love the shop. I love it all, man. I love learning. I love racing. It's just great. All the support you get, all the friends you meet. It's just a really cool experience all around.
Now, did you play any other sports when you were growing up?
Yeah, I did all the baseball, basketball, football, but I kind of took out of that early because I wasn't all that into it. And then I just started working, and that's about it.
You never did the quarter midget thing or anything like that?
No, I always wanted to. It was like a dream of mine, but we just couldn't afford it. And I was always a big fan of Ryan and Keith growing up, and it was just something I always loved.
I remember you as a kid. I remember you as a kid in the grandstands and coming in the pits afterwards because I used to pit next to Keith and Russ Cook and all those guys.
So Russ Cook's my hero, man. I love him.
Kevin's also big into the concert scene. He goes to a lot of concerts.
Big music. I used to play a little music and just I love music. Go to a lot of concerts, but I had to give that up as well. Kind of with the sacrifices of racing, I had to put going to concerts and all that on the back burner because all my money goes to my family and my race car. So
tell some of the shows you've been to.
I'm a big Primus fan. I've been to a lot of Primus shows. Frank Zappa. Well, he doesn't play with Dweezil. Zappa plays now. Metallica. Big Metallica fan. Yeah, just stuff like that. Ween. I don't know if anyone knows the band Ween.
Yeah. Have you ever traveled far to go to a concert, or you just do the local stuff?
Furthest I went to Arizona to see Primus and Tool play.
Really?
Yeah, my buddies were they travel the country playing music, and they were playing near there during that show. So me and a friend of mine flew out to Arizona to watch Primus and Tool. It was a great time.
I'm a big Primus fan too. I like Primus.
All right, Kevin, we really appreciate your time. We love hearing your story. You're more than welcome to check back as your season goes on. If you want to, a month or two from now, if you want to call back in and give us an update how the new car is running, how you're doing, how your dirt racing's doing, you're always welcome on the show. Just let us know when you want to come on, and you're more than welcome to come on.
All right, thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Good luck, buddy. And once again, that is Kevin Flores. And Scott, you hit the nail on the head right at the end there. I mean, he seems like a guy who just enjoys being at the track. I don't think he cares where he finishes, where he runs, what he's doing. I mean, what could Brown do for me? I got to tell Gary Larson to say that the next time he's down the track. That was perfect. It's so cool
Josh,
to have Kevin on.
This car, I hope JJ Lane puts a picture up of it somewhere. You got to see this car. You're going to love this race car. It's your type of race car, man.
I will, but yellow sounds like a mustard color, and obviously I'm a ketchup guy.
You won't even think mustard because you'll just think UPS. I'm telling you, it's the UPS car. Right? They can call it the rotten banana all they want. It's the UPS car. I'm telling you.
John has one of those like portfolio smug bug pages. I'm gonna have to comb through that and see if he's got any pictures of that car on there because I'm intrigued now.
Yeah,
definitely looking forward to it. So with that, I want to kind of revert back a little bit and talk about what took place yesterday, not just in the racing world, but also at River Rock Restaurant and Marina Bar. Huge thanks goes out to Eric and Jeff Lane and everybody who made that event possible. Josh, I've lost track as to how many of these events that we've been doing for them, specifically at River Rock, even though I wasn't able to be there.
I think this was our fourth show at River Rock, I believe.
Yeah, and Ed and Scott and I think the gods were on our side because all the wet weather allowed Timmy to be there as well. And thank you guys for being the boots on the ground and making that event what it is. And I'll tell you,
I'm just glad the internet worked.
Yeah, me too. What was the vibe like there? Because honestly, my takeaway from that Cup race was I think that was one of the most entertaining Cup races from start to finish that we've had in a while. Were people engaged in what was happening? Was it a decent crowd?
Well, the crowd was decent. It wasn't obviously because we're in racing season now. A lot of the dirt guys had things going on, so we didn't see like Chris Garr back there. However, there was still a good crowd. was not empty by any means. It just wasn't exactly the same as Daytona. However, they had the race audio playing the entire time with the broadcast, and especially towards the end, you could hear people reacting and shouting and cheering and booing and this and that. I mean, so the crowd was into it.
That's awesome.
So
and that's what it's all about. And I love that River Rock gets all in where they do. Because, I mean, you usually go to a sports bar and it has to be a major event where they, click off the music and put the TV sound on. And I'm happy that they've done that for the racing events that we have there. So also, Scott, thank you for taking care of our interview there with Kevin. I know you're playing injured a little bit tonight after having to scream and shout a little bit over some of the music at the end of the night. But I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I love the River Rock show. We always have a good time when we go there. And it's funny because it was a little tough for us to go there because we were at the races for so long on Saturday. It's a long day for us at the track. We got there at 1 o'clock, because we practiced at 2 and the Fan Fest was from 4 to 5. And then we raced all night. Don't get out of there to midnight. Don't get home to 1 o'clock. Don't go to bed to 2 o'clock. Had to get up in the morning, unload the race cars, get my podcast equipment and head over there. It's a long day. So on the way over there, Nancy's like, all right, we'll do the podcast. We'll eat lunch. We'll get out of there. You know what I'm saying? She says the same thing when we do the Daytona 500 party. We're always the first ones to get there and the last ones to leave, man. Yep. She never leaves. And she gets drinking, talking, racing, eating. We're there until the end.
But that means you guys are doing it right. And Josh, I understand that we had a couple of other helpers that were with us, Alexis and Bailey. Alexis was kind of checking out what you were doing with the editing. I know that Bailey was helping you out, Uncle Scott. She
had her stat book with her.
I mean, Timmy, considering the fact that the girls got rained out, they seemed pretty happy that they were a part of this thing yesterday.
Yeah, I actually think at the end of the day, they kind of wanted to do the podcast more than they actually wanted to go racing. And it was funny because I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning on the road by 5:30 going to Stafford on Saturday. And I went to the races and, ended up at Wall, went to bed. I woke up the next morning, like one eye open, and I picked up my phone to check Facebook. I'm like, please, Alan Brenner, please make sure you rain it out. Thank God he did. And I went back to bed. We woke up about 10 o'clock and Bailey was still sleeping. And I woke her up and she's like, are we racing today? I'm like, no, we're going to go to the podcast. So they were very happy about that. And they've taken a good interest in, like you said, Bailey. Now she goes to the races on Saturday and she takes notes at the races. And Alexis and Tizzy are big into the editing because they all have the YouTube pages. So
wait, so Bailey has a notebook, but Scott doesn't?
No, I don't.
And I'll tell you
what, let's talk about the Talladega race. I thought it was a great race. It was very exciting at the end. I think the new rules package produced pretty good racing.
And we talked in the lead up to it that there was a lot of apprehension about what we were going to see. And I think many of the drivers, many of the media members thought it was just going to be a mess. And I mean, it started early. The first wreck of the day with Bubba Wallace when he got into the back of one of his best friends in Ryan Blaney and sparked a big wreck that took out Kevin Harvick. Clint Boyer was in it. Michael McDowell and Matt Tifft had good runs going when they got swept up in that.
That was still far from the big one, though.
Yeah, but it was so early, it was kind of like, okay, here we go.
What was that, lap 10 or 12 or something like that?
Right around there.
Yeah, I know I got in a text while we were doing the show, obviously before the race started, Rick Patterson texted me. He's like, I'm betting on the 43 today. And I was like, yeah, whoops.
And I know, in fact, Timmy, I got a question for you because obviously Freddie Kraft, who's a friend of yours, friend of mine, and he's a friend of all of ours. He's been on the show before. When something like that happens, I immediately feel sorry for the spotter because I feel as though he's in a vulnerable position and kind of in front of everybody else. I feel like in my head, I'm picturing him catching a lot of heat. Does that really happen? Like, if you're spotting for a driver who gets into a bit of a mess, like, do a lot of other spotters from other teams come over to you and start giving you a tough time about it?
Oh, yeah. Like I've said before on here, at the end of the day, it's always the spotter's fault, no matter if it is or it isn't. But, there's definitely messages sent up there through the spotters, and they get yelling at each other and stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, like they say, it's the drivers that are in the car, and you can't control what they do. You know, you can only say what you can say, and if, you know, sometimes it's good enough, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But yeah, they yell at each other up there.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for both of them, Bubba and Freddie, of course, you know, very, very socially active people in the community, and I'm sure that everybody's aware, you know, now they've had some time to sit on it, that, you know, new package, new learning ability, and I think about Bubba Wallace and that race team, like, they really only have 3 shots, it seems, to realistically
get in
the victory lane.
100%. I was just going to say that's definitely probably a race they circled on their calendar and saying we have a shot to win here. And, you know, it was only a year ago that he finished second at the Daytona 500, right? So, I mean, it was a shame that that exactly went through my mind when I seen him wreck. I said, oh, my God. And same with Michael McDowell. He also got caught up in that wreck. I'm sure that was one of his shots to win, too, this year, you know.
Well,
and I mean, the opportunity. Go ahead, Josh.
No, I would say, didn't McDowell had have what was it happened at Texas? Because I know that he had his famous, you know, flip was at, was at Texas. But I thought this past race there, something was going. Either he did really well or had another big hit.
He did really well. That team has been outshining the other 2 teams at Front Row Motorsports this year, and he's got a new crew chief. I think he has Drew Blickensdorfer, and Drew was very, you know, he was a Hendrick crew chief for many years, and he's Michael McDowell's crew chief now, and he's turned that team around. And Michael is a good driver, and he's a real good restrictor plate driver, or tapered spacer driver, we should call him now. So it was, and you know, Front Row Motorsports has won on the big tracks before. I think they won with David Gillian, and I think they won with David Reagan as well. So I know Dave. It was a shame when Michael McDowell got wrecked out early, because him and Bubba Wallace, I'm sure, wanted to win that race.
Who was in the Wood Brothers car?
That'd be Paul Menard.
Because I know at the end they were up there too.
Yeah.
Which that seems to be kind of a well, we go back to, you know, anybody can win at these tracks, and we think of Trevor Bayne at the 500. You know,
I mean, even before Trevor Bayne, the Wood brothers have always been a force, even going back to the David Pearson days on the super speedways. They really put a lot of effort into the super speedways, and they still do today.
It was good to see them running up front there, though. Go ahead, Eric.
And don't forget, Menard nearly won the shootout or the clash until he got taken out before the rain hit. So
who took him out?
It was the 48.
Yes, Sam Ballon's favorite driver, so we got to pick on him a little bit.
Yeah, it was in fact the 48. But also Matt Tiff was involved in that crash we're talking about, the another one of the Front Row Motorsports cars. And the cool thing about Matt Tiff is, so the Cup guys were off last week, and we had an event at GoPro Motorplex for their 3rd race in the 2019 karting challenge at GoPro. And Matt actually came out along with Danny Stockman, Austin Dillon's crew chief. And Stockman had a really bad wreck because I had to hightail out of there to get to Bowman Gray, even though they rained out. Stockman got in a wreck where he ended up getting flipped out of his cart, and thankfully he was okay. Oh, wow. But it was cool to see Matt Tiff just kind of take advantage of the opportunity. He grabbed one friend, went out to the kart track. I don't know where he got the kart from. I really didn't get a chance to talk to him, but you would have never known that he was a Monster Energy Cup Series driver. He was just kind of blending in with the drivers in the drivers meeting. He came up, asked a few questions, got a little bit of clarity in some things. So I was sentimentally pulling for him, because it was nice to see on his off week that he came out, had some fun, and he didn't have that presence as if, like, you know, he was better than everybody. He just wanted to blend right in. And in the dry, he was really quick. Once it started raining, he slowed down a little bit. So I was kind of pulling for him, and he really didn't even get caught up in the wreck. It was a piece of McDowell's car that came out from underneath of him in front of him, and it kind of sliced into the radiator opening on the front of Tiff's car, and that put him on the damage clock, and they couldn't get it fixed in time. So
that was like a ninja throwing star thing that happened there.
Yeah, it was wild because they could not get it out from underneath the front bumper of that car. And the whole time I'm watching, and I did pick him in that Survivor League that I'm in, Josh, and so that was also another reason why I was kind of pulling for him.
Addiction.
Yeah, that's a year-long tournament. But so
that's
that
a committed addiction.
A little bit. That wreck happened. I thought it was going to set the stage for what we're about to see, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. Even with a number of green flag pit stops, everybody was able to accordion back together, and we really did see what kind of looked like the early 2000 or late 90s style racing, where the bottom line was the preferred line. We didn't see guys running single file up against the wall like we did in the 500 or at Talladega last fall. And I just loved it. I couldn't leave the television, and I didn't notice how fast the laps were clicking off. And that's why Robin Miller posted an article on racermagazine.com, and I'll pose the question to the three of you as well. What defines a good race? Is it a good wreck? Is it a close finish? My answer to that is when the race goes by and you don't even notice that it's kind of clicking off. Like we've all been in the track when a race is a snooze fest, and you're just kind of like sitting there looking up at the pylon saying, oh, God, we still got 300 laps to go. And
okay.
I didn't notice that at Talladega. I was kind of like, oh, wow, there's 20 to go. So Josh,
I agree with that. I kind of had the same feeling. I mean, they would announce it here and there. Now, during the first stage, I was editing the video to try to get that posted as quick as possible. But the second and third stages, I was into it. Now, some of it I might have tuned out the announcers here and there, talking with my dad, because we were just hanging out watching it. But I was glued to the TV. I was a little annoyed they didn't do side-by-side the last couple commercial breaks. But that's neither here nor there. I was into it. I think that it was a lot of side-by-side. I think some of it still came down to I guess what we'd call, at least over the past, let's say, 10 years, typical super speedway race. With the big one and, stuff like that. Like, when a car goes around and then, all hell breaks loose. That seemed typical. That didn't seem different, like the rules changed anything there. The speeds, I didn't notice anything, but it did seem like the cars were moving around a bit more. The rear spoilers are obnoxious as anything, but if that's what's working, great, keep it. I know they made them clear, so that
they're getting so big they got to make them clear so you can see.
I agree. But if it's working, then great. Honestly, things that stood out to me more were like Keselowski's backwards pit stop.
That was amazing.
That was, and the other part, a couple pit stalls ahead, somebody was it 38. Overshot his pit and stopped in the next pit stall, went to throw it in reverse, but that guy came in and shoved him out. So he had to, kind of move out over and back. It was absolute chaos and as exciting as anything. And we want to talk about, was it Kurt Busch that got airborne?
It was actually Kyle Larson. Kyle
Larson. It's again with a K. But that car getting sideways and then just lifting, and honestly, another foot or two, he would have been up into the inside catch fence.
Right, over the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the wreck was very similar to Matt Kenseth's blow over there. I think it was 2015 or 16. And so the race ended up coming down to a late shootout. They had one big wreck with Chris Buescher, Matty Benedetto, and Justin Haley, who had a good run going in his Cup debut. And then that set up another shootout where Ricky Stenhouse, apparently he said he blew a tire. And Scott, we're talking about people who are desperate, for these opportune races, like at the tapered spacer tracks, we'll call them. Stenhouse is top of the list. I mean, the level of aggression he shows, and he was up there in the mix, and he got shuffled out late.
He was flying the first half of the race. He was one of the fastest cars the first half of the race.
Now, I will say, I'm going to interject real quick. When he hit the wall pretty darn hard. On that last lap. And I know that they wanted to keep it green as long as possible, but with a hard hit like that, I'm sorry. You should throw the yellow. You should get somebody to the car. I don't care.
Yeah, but you know what, Josh? I thought about that because I was sitting with you and your father when that happened. And you did express that feeling to me. I thought about it. They might have had a radio communication with him, and he might have said he was fine.
Maybe, but still.
If we remember the race, I'm sorry, Josh, the race last fall, the similar thing happened where Matty Benedetto went head on the fence when he was driving the 32 car, and they didn't throw the yellow. And that was one thing Kurt Busch was really upset about because he ran out of fuel coming out of 4, and that's how Almirola won the race. Mm-hmm. According to NASCAR, when they were questioned about it, they said that, I guess, I don't know if he dropped the window net or they heard him talking to the team, so they didn't dispatch the crews, According to Steve O'Donnell, the reason for the yellow on the last lap was, in fact, for the 17, albeit that it was late. And there was also a big chunk of debris sitting on the front straightaway. Okay. As to why it was late, they didn't really elaborate.
Because they're NASCAR.
Yeah, and Stenhouse said that it was actually a cut tire that put him in the fence, and that's what started the wreck in the first place. I'm wondering if maybe he was slow to put the window net down. He did say he intended to stay strapped in case they did come back around at speed. But nevertheless, kind of awkward set of circumstances. I wanted him to let it race out, Scott.
So did I. I was like, don't throw the yellow. It's doing great. Ryan Preece is right there. Let him race, you know?
Yeah, I figure worst case scenario, throw the yellow when they get to the tri-oval, if there's debris all over the place. But
Tim, I think it was you that sent that video earlier today. It was a home video from some local short track somewhere. It was like they looked like TQs, but they sounded more like the super modifieds or something like that.
Yeah, they were like a full sprint.
A full sprint car. And somebody wrecked and was sitting coming out of four.
They had the yellow flag out, and they were waving the yellow flag like crazy.
They must not have lights around the track or something.
Well, that goes back to me. There's no reason why, and they should have spotters because that's what spotters do. They would have been slowed. There was cars 3/4 of a lap down to that. That guy where he spun. So
and then
they were coming out of the fourth corner like the flagger was waving the green flag and not the yellow flag.
Yeah.
I mean, that flagger was doing everything he could except jump out of the flag stand to get those guys to slow down, and they just never did.
I can only assume that there's no receiver, no spotters, and no lights around the track to further indicate caution.
And that's why I'm defending NASCAR on this. NASCAR has all that stuff, and I'm sure there was some type of radio communication letting them know that Ricky was okay and let's finish this race, And
Scott, you mentioned Preece because he ended up finishing third there at Talladega. And I know we always joke around and say F that guy, but in one of the diehard race fans page, there was a post saying, "Let's pump the brakes about Ryan Preece. My granddaughter could run third at Dega. Watch what he does at all the other tracks."
I disagree with that. Ryan Preece is a great race car driver. I think it's more the car itself. They always say that tapered spacer restrictor plate is the great equalizer. Mm-hmm. So I think that it gave him a time to shine as a driver. And he backed up his Daytona 500 finish. He also had a top 10 in the Daytona 500.
He's had I think it's been a combination of good driving and luck, because if we go back to the 500, how he dodged some of those wrecks.
He weaved right through them.
Which, I mean, some of that is luck.
And not only that, I remember AJ Allmendinger. Not only did he run good in that car on the road courses, he ran good in that car very well at the super speedways as well. So the team shows that they have good road course cars and they have good super speedway cars. Now they just got to get better on the intermediate tracks. A couple other names I just want to point out. I like pointing out the small teams that run well on the super speedway tracks. We mentioned Ryan Preece had a good finish. Daniel Hemrick, I know he races for one of the bigger teams, but he is a rookie, and he needed a good run also. Do you agree, Eric?
Yeah, and I will tell you, the Preece and Hemrick they're good friends off the track as well. And I didn't realize how much goes into being a rookie when you join the Cup side. I kind of got a little bit of dialogue from them when I had some brief conversation. They were in the process of trying to decide whether or not they wanted to buy an RV and have to drive it to the track. Some of these underfunded drivers, and I'm not saying underfunded in a disrespectful term, I'm saying it in the sense of compared to some of the big stars.
They haven't made their money. Yeah, they haven't made the money yet.
Some of them drive their own recreational vehicle to tracks like Talladega, where they're only maybe 5 to 8 hours away. Some of them have to go out and hire a driver. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces that we don't really realize go into them having to commit to 38 weeks on the road. And also for Preece and Hemrick, I mean, yes, they're driving for teams who have been struggling. And think about it this way, and this will actually tie into another point that we wanted to make before we shifted gears off of Talladega. They're driving for the Chevy brand, which their top tier teams have been struggling. Right. This is the first win for Chevy this season. First win for Chevy in a number of races. And
real quick, Eric, I just want to mention something about that. And I'm wondering if Ryan Preece is going to get in trouble for this, because you just mentioned the Chevy thing. In his interview, he said that the head of Chevy Motorsports came over the radio and said, "Okay, Chevy drivers, I do not want you working with a Toyota or a Ford. No matter what happens, you stick with a Chevy." So it was kind of like team orders, I've never heard a driver say that. And Ryan said that. And after he said it, he had a weird look on his face. He's like, uh-oh, should I said that or not said that? So
Yeah,
There's a little bit of inside information.
It sounds like there were a couple other Chevy drivers who may not have said on the telecast, but I think they also reiterated it in other meetings where, like, they said, or in other interviews, they said there were multiple meetings throughout the week that this is the plan. They're taking every Chevy team and they're sticking together. And I mean, at times they populated the entire top 10, before things got crazy at the end. And the plan, it worked for the Fords last year, and
it's been working for Toyota since Toyotas came into the sport. It's about time Chevy got everybody together and said, we got to start working together and not against each other.
But now the question is, and after that wreck and after that whole set, by the way, the situation the guys were talking about a little bit ago where the spotter may have been an issue, that was the USAC Silver Crown race in Toledo, where flowracing.com has the race uploaded. They had a couple of hard wrecks in that event, but the field was huge, so that made me happy. But it was one of their races at Toledo. If you go to Flow Racing's Twitter handle, you'll see the replay of what Scott, Josh, and Timmy were just talking about. But also, we had the wreck there. We had the Larson wreck that we talked about. Chase Elliott did, in fact, win that race in the Chevy with his teammate Alex Bowman behind him in the Chevy with Ryan Preece third in a Chevy. You get the point. It obviously worked out. I was surprised it did, though, because it seemed like even at speed that the Fords, whether it be the Penske Fords or the Gibbs Toyotas, like I feel like that the Chevys were not unbeatable. They just have to be in the right place at the right time. But it worked out for them to finally get that win.
A couple other names I want to mention. Ryan Newman finished well in that Roush car. He finished 7th. And that's a little bit more pressure on Ricky Stenhouse, too. We were just talking about how Ricky Stenhouse has pressure on him. Now he's got Ryan Newman in the Roush car, and Ryan Newman's running good. I mean, he's not running great. He's not winning, but he's finishing in the top 10 every week where Ricky isn't. So that puts a little more pressure on him. I also want to give a shout-out to Brandon Gaughan. Brandon Gaughan races 4 times a year now. He's with a very small team called Beard Motorsports. They do have Richard Childress cars and engines. Finished 8th, man. What a great run for him. He says they got one full-time employee. He's the crew chief, and he works on these super speedway cars all year long, 4-4 super speedway races. And he said it was the first time they actually bought a backup car to the racetrack. So they actually have 2 race cars now. So good for them. I also want to mention Corey LaJoy. He finished 11th with that number 32 car. That was a great run from Corey.
He finished. That's the
yeah. And Reed Sorensen, I just want to give a quick shout out for him. He's a guy that at one time was a very big name, and he was going to be a rising superstar. He's had to back up a little bit and do starting parks and stuff like that. He was driving for Premium Motorsports in the number 27. He had a strong 18th place run, so good for Reed.
I thought Jeff Earnhardt was doing good too, and he got in that last wreck.
He got up in that Kyle Larson wreck at the end. And I want to compliment Josh on something. I was sitting with him and his father while they were interviewing Kyle Larson on the big screen, and he didn't say at one time that he went to punch Kyle in the face. So I was pretty impressed with him.
I was waiting for that this whole time. I was waiting for that to come up. But also, NASCAR did say they are going to look into why that car got airborne.
That was crazy, wasn't it? I've never seen a car lift like that at that angle. It was weird.
And that late. Like, it was like he slid forever, and it wasn't until he got within, a few hundred feet of the wall that it was like, okay, time to fly.
I was trying to, because I'm a super genius. I was trying to figure it out by watching videotape too, and I was going to let NASCAR what happened with there. I was kind of thinking maybe there was like a drainage ditch or something there, like a storm grate or something that could have elevated the car as he went over.
Makes sense.
There was nothing, and it just, like you said, it was like the weird, like a hand just reached down and picked that car up. It was so weird the way that car lifted off the ground,
And I saw a lot of fans, mostly on social media. Like I monitor Twitter a lot. Haley makes fun of me for it all the time, but it's a good source of information and perspective. And a lot of people saying, "Oh, they got to stop this." Keep in mind that some commercial jetliners take off at 140, 160 miles an hour. Also, if you go back, there was a K&N East race. Actually, no, it was a K&N West race in Fontana in 2006, where Rogelio Lopez did a blowover at Fontana, California. Chad Boat flipped an ARCA car at Kansas. Now, granted, in both those circumstances, they were airborne blowover flips, but they had the assistance of another car hitting them in the door to kind of force the cars to only go upward. The confusion here is it looked as though Jeffrey Earnhardt was well off of Larson's car before it got up in the air. They're suspecting that maybe the door hit he got from Byron before he spun across the track, like disrupted the positioning of the body on the car. I don't know. It was a freak incident, but I'm praying there is not a knee-jerk reaction to overhaul this package because I really want to see how it races in Daytona. I think they hit the nail on the head.
They did so many changes so far. They finally got to leave it alone, or it's going to bankrupt these teams.
Yeah.
And that actually leads to another good point. There was one thing I wanted to throw out to you guys, and
I'm very interested in this next thing you want to talk about, Eric. I have a few opinions about it.
Yeah, and it got my wheels turning as well. So today, Adam Stern, who's a reporter for the Sports Business Journal, he's actually been taking over as one of the key followers for new big breaking news. I mean, he's broke a lot of stories involving NASCAR on a major scale, particularly on the inside. And this came out from him today on his Twitter handle, quote, NASCAR teams are asking the sanctioning body and tracks to help foot the bill for the major expense of switching to the new Gen 7 car, per sources. An unusual move that signals teams still believe the sports revenue distribution center is out of balance. That's because teams will be both buying new components and making obsolete several components of current cars, thus making them close to worthless, close quote. So
I
basically,
agree 100%.
Yeah, it sounds like the teams are kind of going to the sanctioning body and saying, hey, now keep in mind, this Gen 6 car debuted in 2013. It's not that long ago. We're talking less than a decade. So they're kind of going to the sanctioning body saying, hey, we need a little bit of help. Like, you want us to kind of go ahead and overhaul this. We need a break. We need some incentive to kind of go ahead and do this.
Can I say my opinion now, Eric?
Absolutely.
Not only does NASCAR not going to help them with the money to change the cars over, they're going to charge them to change the cars over because NASCAR has a deal with 5-star bodies and all this stuff. So NASCAR's not going to help them. I wish they would. They're not going to. I hope I'm wrong. Not only they're not going to help them with money, they're going to make money off the change, and that's what makes it corrupt. And the problem is too. I've owned on my own race cars for years, many years. And even at the local level, I always said all rule changes do is cost race teams money, even at the local level, the top level. And the tracks never look at it that way because they don't pay it. So I'm so happy for once someone's standing up for the NASCAR teams, and the NASCAR teams are standing up for themselves. And at least they're asking NASCAR to help them. You know what I'm saying? But NASCAR will spin it somehow and make the manufacturers take up the bill or something like that. But time will tell,
well, all right. Now, when it was restrictor plates, now it's tapered spacers. NASCAR.
That's little stuff.
Well, yes. Let's start with the little stuff. But NASCAR issued those. It was a lottery draw. Which one you got? What if they did the same with those rear spoilers and the wickers and start with those bits and pieces? And I mean, at least it's something.
All I can say is, Josh, is they changed the air gun rule, and NASCAR made money off the air guns that you have to run them through. Sometimes NASCAR makes rule changes because they are a business like everybody else, and to make money. You know what I'm saying? It's not fair to the teams that they got to absorb the expense. I'm going to follow this closely, Eric. I hope you can keep us updated on it. I want to see what happens with this. But
yeah,
I'm telling you,
and something that I was thinking about, one of which was the revenue distribution model is okay. So Rob Kaufman came in, and he's kind of the poster child for the charter system, and there's good reason for that. Teams are behind it as well. IndyCar appears to be going down that road slightly with some of the talk about.
Do they have enough
entries
cars for that to matter?
So, well, for the 500, they might, but that's another story for another day in May.
Okay.
Now, it sounds like the current model continues to be that the racetracks still get about 65% of the TV money. And the reason for that is because they only host 1 or 2 races a year. They need enough money in order to survive. So they kind of rely on that TV money to help them out. The race teams are saying they're the ones putting on the show. However, the cost of racing has gotten way out of hand. And
the sponsorship money has dropped as expense has raised.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was listening to that other podcast that Josh does not like us to mention, but Scott, you and I are big fans of it, that Dinner with Racers podcast.
I like that.
Yeah. Well,
hey, real quick, Eric, there's a couple new ones. Todd Bodine, awesome. And Bobby Allison, awesome. You got to listen to those two.
I got to check them out. I was actually combing through some of the older stuff, and they had Justin Marks on, who is actually the son of one of the board members at GoPro. So he's very upfront about the fact that he comes from a family with money, and that allowed him to get some of the opportunities that he had. But he's also dumped a lot back into the sport. He's got the sprint car team with Kyle Larson. He owns GoPro Motorplex, and he has a sense for business. And the cool thing is he's obsessed with trying to be successful in business because his father is. And he's afraid he's never going to get there, and it just drives him to keep doing stuff. But anyway, his idea is to shift gears entirely. Kind of do what IndyCar did. Get a central supplier for the race cars, kind of stop making the teams build in-house, and then let the teams have to purchase the chassis essentially or rent the chassis from NASCAR, so they'll make their money that way. But the teams could stop being manufacture plants and machine shops. Now, the problem is it'll take a lot of the ingenuity out of the race teams themselves. It'll put a lot of guys on the unemployment line, but it will kind of neuter the exponential expense and cost of having to build race cars and change them all. It's getting to a Formula One level almost, where they're building new types of cars and equipments every year. And I don't know how to stop it.
And maybe with NASCAR taking ARCA over, it can be like it was when I was a younger kid. The Cup cars could sell their older equipment to the ARCA teams.
That was my next point, Scott. You just knocked it right out of the park.
I like that. But if you look at Eric, I'm not against your idea or that idea. That idea, we'll call it. But that's going to become what the IROC series was. Now, I liked IROC, but a lot of other people didn't. So
yeah, but Josh, with this, when you got to take your chassis for certification and all these new rules, the cars are so similar now anyway. It's just the teams are building them themselves. So I don't think it would make a change to make it more like the IROC series. I think we're already there, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, Josh, like the only thing going through my mind with that when I heard it, and again, that's the Dinner with Racers episode with Justin Marks, and he explains it a hell of a lot better than I do. It just sounds like a possible solution to stop the spending. And that's the one thing that I can't get out of my head is just the amount of spending that is going on by these race teams, and just whether it was the pit gun thing, like Scott mentioned a few years ago, and Scott mentioned another great point. And Timmy, I don't know if you could elaborate on this because I know you've been around for a while. I mean, there was a time where the old Busch North teams, or now the K&N East teams, they would even get bodies, from old Cup cars.
Yeah,
and
we
now
lost that trickle down effect because all the divisions are different now. They can't sell their used parts like they used to, and that hurt. But you know what, Eric, I don't know if you know about this, and I don't know the whole story either because I just caught the end of it in an interview on NASCAR radio. I heard something that NASCAR and Goodyear at Talladega was letting the bigger teams sell their old tires to the smaller teams at Talladega at like half price, like with the smaller teams didn't have to buy new tires because the tires were holding up good and they were lasting a while. So it kind of helped the bigger teams recoup some of their tire money, and it helped the smaller teams save because they were getting used tires at half price. Did you hear anything about that?
I haven't heard that, but I did hear specifically on the Door Bumper Clear podcast with it. And there was also an article about a Goodyear engineer saying that some of the laps they were using, it might have been at Martinsville, that they could have lasted like the left sides could have held up.
Well, that's the next thing I was going to say. There's a few more tracks in the future that they know that the tires are going to last forever, and they're going to let them do it again. And one of the tracks was Kansas, that they were going to let them do it again. So there is a few tracks on the schedule where the tires last a lot longer, and they're going to allow the big teams to sell their tires at half price to the smaller teams.
Now, I thought that they didn't technically, quote unquote, buy the tires. They lease the tires.
Well, so that's what I'm saying. For these races,
they couldn't sell them because they didn't own them.
Right.
That's why they went to that.
They're changing the rules for a few tracks to save the team's money, which is a step in the right direction.
I agree. Now, you did talk about, again, losing some of the ingenuity, and F1 was a great comparison because I remember when they were coming up with that F duct. And changing the airflow on the straightaways, which then led the FIA to outlaw any device, some broad rule, but then they allowed them to have the DRS system. That became the new thing that replaced whatever. So, Eric, who was it that would think of like 10 or 11 ideas at night of ways to cheat, we'll call it, and he'll get busted on 7 of them, but at least 3 will get by.
Oh, I've heard. I know what you're referencing.
That?
I just can't put a name to it. I want to say it's like one of the greats, like almost like a Ray Evernham or something like that. Or, like Smokey Unique. He comes to mind first. Where it's like.
It might have even been Gary Nelson back in the day too. He was known for that. He said he'd put 10 cheating things on his car, and they would catch him with 7, and he'd get away with 3. So and a lot of times he would put smaller cheats on it, so they didn't find his big cheat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and not that I want the teams to be cheating so much, but what you can learn and find out, like we were talking with that Eagle Eye system. for scanning the cars, and they were using black vinyl in
They
some
said
spots.
that didn't work though.
Okay, but I mean, trying to just get by that
trying
system.
to trick it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it's a different world, than just kind of shaping a bumper or body panel a little bit differently. Now there's so much more in the technology end, but still to see them trying and thinking of new ways. Or who was it Keselowski's team that was getting busted for knocking in that panel during a pit stop?
They were all doing. They were like
Yeah.
hip checking the side of the car and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean Harvick had the thing, where he had that rear brace collapse in the roof at
That was another
the back
thing. They
window.
were designing that to break and collapse during the race.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of, in a sick way, it warms my heart to see that thing happen because to know that
'Cause
these
they're
guys
trying.
are still trying. And even this year, and now this year where they know that if they get caught, they're getting the win. And I forget who said it, but somebody on a Jeff Gluck's post-race podcast said, I thought by now we would have had somebody in the top 3 series get busted for cheating and lose a win. I would have thought that by this point in the season it would have happened once.
Without a doubt. I agree.
And it hasn't. And then you get the conspiracy theorists who are like, well, even if it did happen, NASCAR sweep it under the rug. And I don't think so because we had the same 2 teams win every race except up till Talladega.
Right.
It was either. So
But how nice is it now with this new inspection process that by the end of the night, we have an official winner before we go to sleep at night, and we know who won the race before we actually go to bed at night on the day of a race. We used to do this podcast on Tuesday because we were never sure about the fines coming out on Tuesday, and we didn't want to do a podcast saying that somebody won.
And even then, it would
it's called encumbered or whatever. So we used to wait until Tuesday nights to do the podcast because we used to wait for the official results and the inspections to be over. Now we can do the show on Monday night because by Monday morning it's official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, like sometimes we wouldn't find out a breaking story till Wednesday sometime.
Oh, I know. And our podcast would sound like hell because on Tuesday we would report one way and then we'd wake up Wednesday morning and what we just reported was knocked out of the water by NASCAR inspection. You know what I'm saying?
Eric,
And
how do you listen to so many freaking podcasts?
You know what it is? If I work on a
not
construction
talk
site,
to Haley ever?
no, she a lot of times she works nights, so now the boogeyman knows when to come get me. But if I'm not doing something like this,
alone during the day, is that what you're saying?
so oh god, the dogs protect me. So a lot of times she's doing her nurse duties, and it's friggin' lonely and quiet in here. So I'll throw a podcast on, or if I'm on a construction site, I'm the guy who brings a Bluetooth speaker with me, but I'm not playing.
I tell you what, Eric, I'm right with you. Since I've been podcasting with you guys, I've become addicted to podcasts. I listen to them all day long in my tow truck. It gets to the point where one day I was driving down the highway, the Todd Bodine podcast I'm talking about with Dinners with Racers. He was telling us a modified story that I remember as a kid, so I want to hear his side of the story, and I'm listening to it, and I was listening for him to mention names of people I know and stuff like that. Next thing I know, I looked down at my speedometer. I'm doing like 35 miles on the turnpike because I was so interested in what he was saying. I was like slowing down, I'm addicted to the podcast too. I try to listen to as many as I can.
I'd rather you be going slower than driving out of the lane looking for cars.
And what came back to my mind, this is going all the way back to 1994. The last time I did that is when the OJ verdict came out. I remember being on the highway, and we were all listening to the radio waiting to see if he was guilty or not. And next thing I know, I looked down, I'm doing like 25 miles an hour. But the funny part was I looked around, there was literally people pulled over on the side of the road listening for the verdict. That's how America
crazy.
was in suspense, waiting for that verdict. But real quick on another podcast, Dale Jr.'s. I want to touch base on this last week. But did you guys see that he bought his father's car at Barrett Jackson for $190,000?
Yeah.
He bought one. Tim, did you see that? He bought one of his dad's old NASCAR late models, one of the number 8 Good Wrench Nova cars. And he wasn't sure if it was real. He had Rick Hendrick down at the show. Rick Hendrick was down there buying cars anyway. And he called Rick. He said, listen, if my dad's car, it was estimated to sell at $150,000. Junior called Rick. He said, listen, I'll pay up to $200,000 for that car, but you got to look at it real quick because my cousins built that car with my dad, Robbie G and Bobby G, and they gave him a couple things to look for. One of the things to look for was the the hoop around the drive shaft. They told Rick Hendrick to look under the car and look at the hoop around the drive shaft. He said because they remember his dad making that hoop himself, and I've done this too, but I used to do it around a tree. He heated up a piece of tubing and he bent it around a oxygen bottle for a torch.
Yep.
So they said if it looks like a piece of metal that would fit around an oxygen bottle, it could be a good sign that it was a car that Dale Sr. built himself. And the other telltale thing was that Dale was famous for that his seat set so low, and he sat so low in the car. And the one way he made that work was he would take the stock floorboard would be flat underneath the seat. He would just take a 5-pound sledgehammer and beat the floor down so the seat could sit down. So they said, look under the car and see if you can see hammer marks in the tin where he beat the seat down. And Rick called back. He said, yeah, I had one of my guys look under the car. It's a homemade drive shaft hoop. Looks about the same size as an oxygen bottle. And there's hammer marks underneath the seat. Dale's like, go up to $200,000, get the car for me. He got it for $190,000.
Wow.
He paid for this car.
Do you know what Barrett Jackson this was? Scottsdale?
It was recent, Tim. It was real recent.
I read, I think I sent a couple months ago or a month ago, there was a bunch of those Earnhardt cars that came in out of nowhere, and Childress said, I don't know anything about those cars. They're not my cars.
Right.
Yeah, was it part of that lot or?
I really don't know, Tim. And you got to listen to Dale Jr.'s thing. He tells a great story on it. But the other thing was he was still taking a $190,000 gamble. He was waiting to get the car home because Robert G. Jr., which is his cousin, his father was the famous bodybuilder down there, not physical bodybuilder, but on race cars. Bobby G. They're actually cousins. And Bobby G. Jr. works at Junior Motorsports. So he helped his father build that car. He said, when that car gets here, I'll be able to tell more by looking at it. So Dale Jr., while they were waiting for the car to arrive back up here, because of course they got to transport some way up here, they went through old pictures, some of Dale's private collection. Some people sent pictures, they did Google searches. And one of the things they noticed, there was a picture of Dale Jr. himself, about 9 years old or 11 years old, sitting inside the car, right? Because this car was built behind Dale Jr.'s grandmother's house, the original Ralph Earnhardt garage. So it was built in like a 3-bay garage behind the family house. And Dale Jr. used to play over there when he was a kid, and he was sitting in the car, and someone took a picture of him, and he had that picture. And they noticed that the radio box was a homemade tin radio box, and it was pop riveted to the roll bars on the driver's side, and it was pop riveted crooked, like the box was a little crooked. So as soon as they got the car home, that they looked for the drill holes into the cage where the box would have been pop riveted through.
Yeah.
And sure enough, those holes were there. That's when Dale Jr. knew he had one of his dad's, or a car that his dad built at his grandmother's house. And the car is also famous because it won like 8 races. Like Dale Sr. won like 8 races with that car. So it's a real cool story. I know Josh hates when me and Eric talk about other podcasts, but it was on Dale Jr.'s download on YouTube. And it's like a quick 15-minute episode before he did the episode with Will Power. And it's called like Family Treasure or something like that. Really check it out. It's a great interview. And it also shows Dale Jr.'s passion for the history of NASCAR, I mean, we all know Dale Jr.'s well off, but he was willing.
A TV show on just the history. Like go to old racetracks and walk around and, go to old race car shops and stuff.
He's definitely leaning that way. I think we will see him do something like that. I did see him do something with that one track down that I forget, Metrolina or whatever it was called.
Yeah, that's where his dad got his first winner.
Right, he's been over there. I mean, Dale Jr., he wants to keep the history of NASCAR alive, and he's doing a great job. I know Dale's got the money, but for him just to lay out $190,000 to take a gamble if he can get one of his dad's cars back, it was a big gamble, and it worked out for him.
I would be curious to know who was betting against him on that.
And it's kind of, and I understand that it's kind of horrible that they were, because the guy was trying to get his dad's car back. You can imagine being the other rich guy there running the price up.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
If they didn't know who they were bidding against.
Well, they knew because Rick Hendrick was there, you know.
Hendrick's guys have Hendrick all over their jackets. And,
Yeah,
maybe.
and plus they were looking the car over, and I'm sure the guy that owned it was there and asking why they were looking it over. And it's almost like he knew they were going to go up to 200,000. So I think maybe he had a guy running their price up until they got to 190. You know,
because I am a big fan of those Barrett Jackson shows, and Rick Hendrick is there, but he does not do the betting himself anymore.
right.
Probably for that simple reason. There's guys there that want to just try to run his bet up.
Yeah. Well, how much did that family truckster go for?
91,000.
91,000. Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't a movie one. That was one that they built for
That was
the
just a
mother.
replica.
Yeah, it was an official one, but it was not in the movie.
Right.
It was built for the mother. She got that. The mother of who played the mother, Beverly D'Angelo, whatever her name was.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right, congratulations, Eric.
done pretty well.
Yeah, I did just want to add one more thing before I turn my attention over to Josh, as he wants to mention something really briefly about Red Farmer. I just had this like eureka moment in my mind. So Matthew Dillner is the producer now, essentially, for a lot of the Dale Jr. media or the Dirty Mo media with the Dale Jr. download. And as you know, Matthew Dillner has a website and social media platforms dubbed Lost Speedways. And I think that would be a perfect collaboration, especially with Dale Jr. having such a love for the history of the sport. If they could somehow integrate those two platforms together in some way, even if it's for like a short series that they do with Dirty Mo Media, just to have Dale Jr. himself kind of revisit some of these places that he can and maybe retell some of the history and his personal perspective of it if he has any relations with it. That's a great idea. And Dylan is a great person for him to team up with to do that. And hopefully that's something they're working on. I know they're putting out more content. They got a new thing going with Bubba Wallace. And they're bringing motorsports coverage, particularly NASCAR, to a whole new level, and I love it. It's a great thing to do. And speaking of old timers, Josh, I see a note on here about Red Farmer.
Well, there's Tim had sent us a video in our group chat here. Now, although I should say, if you want to do things about abandoned racetracks, Scott, how you come on down to Waretown? We'll go for a hike and go check out Amatol. We can go up and walk around the Lowe's parking lot that used to be Flemington.
Hey, don't laugh. Me, Tim, John Blow at the my father. We used to do Sundays like that. My mom had a station wagon. We would jump in it and we'd go look at old racetracks.
It kills me. Josh and Eric, if you could picture my mom's living room, there's literally has to be, and I'm not exaggerating, 220 VHS tapes. Somewhere amongst that mess, on an unmarked VCR tape, we have footage of like when John didn't even have his driver's license. I think he had his permit, and we went to the old Manahawkin Speedway, which now ironically is Martin Truex Boulevard.
Oh God.
A footage of that, and we went to Vineland that day, I think.
Yeah, we went all the way down to Vineland.
And that was an Atlantic City Speedway we went to. We have it all on videotape, and ironically, if I remember right, that was my brother's first day of getting a speeding ticket.
Yeah, I got a speeding ticket that day. I was driving the station wagon. I got a ticket going like 75 miles an hour down the parkway.
He got a little too excited.
Josh, we had it was Shannon Connor's dad's. When VCR cameras first came out, you had to take the VCR with you and the camera. Was hooked to the regular VCR.
And a battery pack.
And a big, huge battery pack.
Right.
We had all that. And I was holding all that. And John was driving a Datsun 280ZX around the racetrack, and I was filming from inside the car.
Oh, God. The world's first GoPro.
Hey, if it's all right with you guys, I'm going to check off. My voice is actually killing me right now. Can you guys finish this without me?
I think we can get through. But thank you, Scott.
All right. Thank you. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Have a good night, Scott.
All right.
Thank you,
See you
Scott.
later. Before we get on the Red Farmer, I just wanted to mention that Chase Elliott, he won the race, and Bill Elliott won the race this weekend too.
Yeah. I saw you said it was like a legend or like a 50 and over, or senior citizen race or something.
I have it pulled up. 1988 Cup champion took part in historic sports car racing at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta.
Okay.
In Georgia, and he won.
Oh, cool. Did they sound the horn for that too? I
believe they did. It had 21 cars entered, so he didn't just beat 5 cars. He was a full field, so.
So yeah. I think I'm not sure if we mentioned it on the air, but they did sound that horn back at that bar.
They definitely did. Yeah, I saw it on social media.
For Chase.
Yep.
Yeah, who unfortunately won.
That's terrible. It's terrible.
All right, so Red Farmer.
Yeah, so there's just a quick video. Red Farmer's still going at it. I forget how old he is here, but he's 70s, 80s, still racing. One thing he said is like, yeah, I would like to make it into the Hall of Fame. He's been in a few others, but he wants to make it into the NASCAR Hall of Fame one day. Still, hopefully, while he's still alive.
Yeah, if I remember right, he was probably back in the day, kind of like when some of those guys went quote unquote outlaw racing against NASCAR. I think he was one of those guys. So he might have a tarnished reputation with some of the older people in NASCAR. Maybe that's what's keeping him out.
Well, I think there was something that we had mentioned on the live show yesterday about the drivers standing up because they were uncomfortable with the speeds. Eric, was that? I think you brought that up.
There was more. It seemed as though there was apprehension and a little bit of. You could just kind of tell the guys weren't really certain with how things were going to go. There seemed to be more concern than there typically is at Daytona Talladega, which there's usually a high level. This just seemed to be a little bit elevated.
Now, they brought this to NASCAR, right? Their concerns.
Yeah, that was Dave Despain did a whole show on that one time. It was very interesting. It goes back to what I was just saying. They kind of almost tried to form a
union.
And Bill Francis was like, screw you, I'll just have somebody else race the race. I don't care,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It really wasn't the first time that's happened. I mean, this kind of harkens back to when the super speedways first came up. But that's all I had for that. So anyway, moving forward from that, I think that about covers everything with NASCAR. I mean, it was exciting. I'm glad that it's working out. I'm glad that I haven't heard too much complaining about the racing product, so at least the fans seem happy this week. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. Next up is going to be Dover, and we'll see how that package plays out there. Hopefully, there'll be a little bit more passing.
Yeah, there's a lot of anticipation for Dover, especially because Bristol, which was the last concrete race, was so competitive and so good. And I mean, look, let's be honest, Dover's kind of hit or miss. Like I've been to some Dover races, back when that was the track that was an arm's length away from me that the Cup Series had raced at. Some of them were fantastic. Some of them were, like I mentioned earlier, where I look up at the scoring pile and I'm like, how are we only halfway? And, I'm optimistic, though. I really am. I don't know. Actually, as we do this podcast, I was trying to get the hockey game on the television. For whatever reason, I'm having problems with my NBC Sports app. So I got the 2002 race from Dover on. And I mean, I've been kind of peering over and looking at the racing product. And it's crazy how close together those cars used to be able to run. And I kind of hope we're going to see some of that this weekend. And I'm also got my fingers crossed for good weather because a lot of our friends will be going to the race this upcoming weekend. Trucks Friday, Xfinity Saturday, and then the Monster Energy Cup Series race on Sunday with their triple header.
Good. So from there, we're going to head on into the open wheel stuff. First thing up is we got a link in our group chat about a fire at the old Nazareth Speedway. I'm not sure what building that ended up being, but Tim, was that you that sent the fire at Nazareth?
Yeah, that was. I found it on Facebook. From what I got out of that, I guess there was video that I did not see of somebody running in with a gas can and setting it on fire.
Oh, of course.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Unfortunately, there's two theories. It could just some guy wanted to light a fire. Some people say it's to elevate the interest in knocking the rest of the racetrack down,
To make it so there's nothing left to save. That way they can say, oh, well, now might as well bulldoze it now. Okay. That's a shame. I know that, the kart or now IndyCar series raced there for quite some time. Eric, it's going to be May?
It's going to be May. So let the Justin Timberlake memes kind of fly around because it's happening in 2 days. And that means the Indy 500 is fast approaching. We are expecting I'm hyped. Yeah, well, the balloons are one thing, which the EPA has been harping on my balloons, and I want to tell them to stay away. Let me have my one day. You can ban balloons everywhere else. Leave them for the 500.
Can they make them biodegradable?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. As long as they float.
You got to think in this day and age they make them biodegradable by now, wouldn't you think?
I would hope.
I know,
so.
right? That if not, I think I just got my new entrepreneurial idea.
Yeah,
So,
really.
I'm going to give that a shot. But once May comes, I will be absolutely obsessed with the 500. The best news that we have is we're going to have bumping again this year for qualifying. There are going to be guys who don't make the race. And we kind of alluded to it earlier that some of the IndyCar owners, including the top-tier owners like Chip Ganassi, Roger Penske, are trying to come out and kind of say we need guaranteed spots for the 500. I couldn't disagree more. Not going to get into it now because the time is not upon us. But I'm hyped for that.
You
Cannot wait.
You got to earn your way in.
It's one of the only races left where besides the NHRA and Supercross, there's really no other races left where you have to, the Chili Bowl. That's the only one I got really, where you have to be the best or the fastest 33, given the circumstances and the criteria to make that race. Yeah, I mean, AC as well. It's just.
But yeah, as far as like the top national series, yes, you're right. And what are they so afraid of? I mean, they're one of the top teams anyway, with all the money invested. Like, what? Because they're going to crash out in practice or in qualifying?
Well, the one thing, and I'll square this up as we get closer, but they did revise the way that they do qualifying to try to enhance some of the interest. So they do like what the Cup Series did for qualifying. In fact,
Group
it sounds
qualifying.
like it's what they're. Yeah, well, it sounds like what they're going to do at Dover is single car qualifying, but 2 rounds, and I think that's pointless. But that's kind of what IndyCar did. They did a full day. They locked in the top 22 or top 30, and then they would let the top 9 go out and run for the pole. And it sounds like they're going to do that for Bump Day too. Anybody who's worse than 30th is going to go back out. Sounds like maybe one time, which defeats the whole purpose of Bump Day, because then you'd have guys who would lay the rear wing back so far. They didn't even know if they were going to survive that 4-lap session, let alone make it into the field. So I don't like the way the format is.
Bump the wall day.
Yeah, and remember, Roger Penske and his cars missed the 500 in I believe it was 95. And then in 2011, Tony Kanaan got in on the final day, and Mike Conway, who was driving for Andretti Autosport at the time, Andretti Autosport was so far off that month that he missed the show, did Conway. And judging by his future on ovals, that may have been a blessing for him in disguise. But and I love Mike Conway, but it just wasn't for him, and that was a sign that things weren't going to pan out for him at Indy. But it can happen. I mean, you could have a rough month and show up, and Hinchcliffe missed it last year, so it's possible, and I understand their desire for it, but leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Is there any talk of any Cup drivers doing it this year?
Not this year. There's hope that with the new schedule alignment or something that they will somehow make it possible, because it sounds like guys like Kyle Larson, and I read a rumor from Robin Miller's mailbag. I don't have the date. It sounds like that part of Kyle Busch's contract extension, there was a contingency in there to allow him to run the Indy 500.
That's why I was asking. I had, me being a Kyle Busch fan, I had heard that he has definitely expressed interest that he wants to do that before he retires.
Yeah, and especially being as competitive as he is, knowing that his brother went out and did it well, finished 6th in the 500 in 2014, I could see Kyle wanting to do that and try to one-up him. And some people say they think Jimmy Johnson want to do it. I think that time is come and gone. I think the Indy 500 is incredibly dangerous, and he's plenty fit for it, but I don't know if he's at that point where he's willing to risk that much for the sake of his career.
Hey, he might do better there than he's been doing in NASCAR, so...
Touche.
I mean, how much worse can it get? I don't know. So I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. Was it Alonso? He's going to be doing it.
Yeah, Alonso's got an entry in, although he struck. They had an open test there a few days ago. Speeds were right around 226. They got some of the rookies out there. There were a handful of rookies who didn't make the open test. They're going to have to wait till rookie orientation come May. But 226 was the mile per hour range. Alonso had a mechanical problem when he first got out there, but he did get up to speed a little bit. Keep in mind, though, this aero package with Indy, it's different than the time that Alonso ran the first time. This one's a little bit more tricky, and IndyCar is in the phase of trying to do something to perhaps bring some of that ability to lessen the negative effects of dirty air, kind of like what the Cup cars did this weekend at Talladega.
Right.
And we're not going to see if it's going to work until we actually get into the nitty-gritty that is the month of May. So,
well, I think they need to put some VHT or some sticky stuff down the outside lane and make Indy more than a one-lane track. First off,
Robin Miller is a big proponent to bring back the apron. Pave the grass down in the apron. Let the Indy cars race there. Let the Cup cars race there. See if it works at Phoenix. You know, you got guys run on the apron in 3 and 4 in Phoenix, or ISM Raceway it is now. Pave it. See if they race on it, and let them have at it.
Honestly, they're so fast. There's no side by side unless you're doing like half speed. And then the slightest twitch and the car's around and into the wall. I mean, it's extreme. I'm not taking that away. I'm not saying that these guys aren't brave or skilled or anything like that. I'm saying that the racing product suffers because it's become a one-lane track. At least for the 500. That's why make it stickier or something and let the guys actually, race side by side or, fine. The inside can be the preferred lane, but, you're not going to, hit the wall or drop like a freaking rock if you're on the outside for a lap. But IndyCar also needs to do double file restarts. I don't want to see them crash, but I want to see some cars that are actually racing, not this strung out thing of Christmas lights that, starts in single file. It's not exciting.
I don't know. They tried it in 2011. It was a bit of a mess. They didn't do it and I mean, when I think about Indy, man, I mean, that front straightaway is so narrow, and I just think of what in the world would happen if somebody had a mechanical problem.
Well, they start 3 wide at Indy, right?
Yeah, but they're pretty well spaced out. I mean,
so why can't you do a double file restart?
If you space them out like you do when you come to the green, then you have a valid argument. So the only justification
these are supposed to be the best of the best drivers. I think they should be able to handle it.
Yeah, but I mean, crazy is still crazy. It's a hell of a risk, man. I don't know if I would be up for that. I don't know.
Pocono, I could use it. I don't want to see them get hurt. I'm not asking for wrecks. I'm just asking for a little bit of racing.
But even on a single file restart, they still got 7 wide at Pocono a couple years ago.
That's few and far between. You're picking exceptions there, buddy.
I am. But we'll talk more about that as the 500 approaches. To me, that's a national holiday, not Memorial Day, 500 Day. It's my second Christmas. In fact, it's probably my first Christmas. So my future offspring's in trouble because they're not going to take full priority. But it is what it is. Also, Formula One raced in Azerbaijan. I hope I'm saying that right, or I just offended an entire country. And it was in Baku, which is a phenomenal track to play a video game on. Not the best track to have a race. It was Mercedes, but it wasn't Lewis Hamilton. It was Valtteri Bottas who got the win. But the biggest story was Daniel Ricciardo in his new Renault ride, only 4th race in for that team, 4th race of the season, actually overcooked the corner on Danny Kvyat, I believe it was. And they both ran wide on the runoff, and for whatever reason, Ricciardo backed up straight into the other stationary car, and it was a rather embarrassing move for the Australian, who I'm a fan of, but that was one of those "what were you thinking" moments.
Hey, the engine didn't explode.
Yeah, that's true.
Could
have been a lot worse
for Ricciardo for once. That race was happening basically while we were doing our live show. So we're going to try to get more F1 and Formula E and stuff like that. We didn't get to talk about 24 Hours of Lemons adding an all-electric division.
Oh, that's wild. That's the first I'm hearing of that.
The first all electric car to get an overall win will get was it like 5 tons of cash or 50 tons of cash? No,
that's pretty neat. That's
the thing
something I
is,
got to check out.
They're doing it by weight because it's nickels.
It
comes out to like 50 grand or whatever, which is still pretty good for a Lemon's purse. But they are going to allow battery changes, just like refueling would be done in the pit lane. Because they know the batteries aren't going to last the whole race, obviously. Then you can bring them back and recharge them and all that. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm sure. I know Tim's interested in the lemon stuff. So basically, the whole idea of it was, look, electric vehicles are a thing. they're becoming more popular. We don't want it to be a war of, electric vehicles versus gas vehicles, or people thinking that, racing is going to go away because of it. Like, no, embrace electric vehicles as being another vehicle. And it's a different type of power plant. You're also batteries and anything with the electric drivetrain will not count towards the $500 limit of the car. So you could spend $100,000 on a drivetrain, and as long as the vehicle is under $500, you're fine. So you could get an old, like a '99 Civic for $100, and then do your safety stuff, and then make it electric. And
It's wild.
yeah, so I'm really interested to see how it turns out. It's going to be a lot of fun. But that's really all I got for that. We have a little bit of local stuff. Some sad news out of Riverhead. A legend driver, Silas Hiscock, succumbed to his injuries from a practice crash the other day. He was 78 years old. So, great to see that, older guys are still out there, trying to live the dream. But this is, just tragic.
Yeah, and Josh, when I first read the headline, and I went to social media as most, and I just tried to find more information because a lot of the news reports were rather vague. You hear that he was 78 years old. Your immediate thought is potentially that maybe something had happened,
Like a
which
heart
the
attack or
website didn't.
something.
Yeah, which the website did in fact say that the last on-track fatality at Riverhead was the result of a medical emergency,
Mhm.
which did lead to an accident, which we've seen at other racetracks before. However, this seems as though it was in fact accident related, and judging by a lot of the response from some of the people who are familiar with what goes on at Riverhead Raceway, it seems as though not all of the avenues to try to remain particularly safe were taken, for this particular competitor, and he paid the ultimate sacrifice. Now, the silver lining in this is, Mr. Hiscock went doing what he loved. And I'm sure that that's what he would tell everyone that is now left behind to mourn and grieve his sudden, loss in an activity in which he would partake in often. Everybody at the track seemed to say that he was one of the most genuine and kind, competitors that you could ever have. I praise the state of New Jersey, and I praise all the New Jersey racetracks, and I say this as a now North Carolina resident. The fact that the state police has a hand in some of the safety initiatives in motorsports, there was initial knee-jerk reaction that it was going to hurt competitor car count. It was going to hurt people's interest. It was going to run people out of business. And what we've seen is that over time it has saved countless lives. And I really wish that there are some other avenues or even other racetracks that would get all in and just kind of almost force some of these people, especially guys who've been racing for 50, 60 years and they still do it as a recreational hobby, and just kind of get them on board with taking advantage of some of the latest and greatest safety initiatives and technology that's out there, because it may have very well helped kept a lot of these people around a little bit longer. And my thoughts and prayers go out to the Hiscock family entirely. And there's nothing official. A lot of this is just dialogue and just making sure that you have everything available to keep you safe. And if something was still to happen, then yes, that's the ultimate consequence of racing. But
it is a dangerous sport, and I think it always will be. But there have been obviously great safety improvements, and like you said, I think it's great that New Jersey has been embracing these improvements and basically enforcing, these safety upgrades to the cars. And even at Wall Stadium, the state police will walk around and be like, no, I need you to fix that belt there or tuck it in they're actively looking at it. They're looking for frayed belts and things like that. Even if it's up to date, if there's still a problem, they will make you replace it. And that's good. Is it a pain in the butt? Sure. But it's for the driver's safety.
I understand the racer's perspective of, it's not going to happen to me. And when I work on a construction site, I hate wearing a hard hat. I absolutely hate it.
It messes up that gorgeous head of hair.
So I have a little more hair now, but it's not gorgeous at all. but I feel like it cuts off circulation in my brain, who doesn't have enough blood flow as it is. I hate it. And I'll tell coworkers of mine, man, if something falls on me, so be it, and that's just ignorance on my part. But racers feel, but I don't think that's actually going to happen. And I feel like the majority of racers, and you can't be afraid. You can't have that thought in the forefront of your mind, or you're not going to be the best you can be. So I get it. But, this isn't about, it's not always about me. It's about the people that I would affect if I was to get hurt in an accident. And that's what the racers need to start taking into consideration. And sometimes you got to force their hand a little bit. Happened in NASCAR with the Hans device back in 2002. It wasn't until they made it a rule that they forced some guys to go that route. And I think some of these other local tracks need to start looking at that as well. And, again, it's easy to sit here, and hindsight's always going to be 20/20. But at the end of the day, we want to learn something from this. And I think there is something to be learned from this accident. It doesn't take back what had happened, but, it's an opportunity. And again, our thoughts and prayers go out to the Hiscock family. And just sounds like one of the best guys to be around in the Legend Car paddock at Riverhead, which could sometimes be a high-intensity sector of the pit area, it sounds like, out there. And, and that's just sad news to wake up and read. So we're thinking, and the other bit of irony is, aside from the incident that took place with the driving school back in 2015, the last fatality at Wall was a Legend Car wreck too, as well, back in 2002. And that's a type of vehicle that has not really evolved since its inception. I wonder if there's something on their front that they're kind of looking at it, trying to bring those a little bit up to a different type of generational vehicle. We talk about how NASCAR changes cars every 10 years. I don't really know if the Legend Car chassis or model has changed at all, and maybe there's some improvements that can be made on that front as well. So just a thought. I don't know anything about the engineering of those Legend cars. So
I don't think there's anything wrong with going back and taking another look just to see if there's anything you can do better. Yeah. That's part of ingenuity and safety and progress. And
that's one thing good about NASCAR is they have that research and development place. And unfortunately, when things like this happen, they do take the race cars away. And when it happened to John, they took John's car away. And one of the things that they did was they put that bar behind their helmet, and that's called the Blewett bar now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when Blake Barney got into his accident this weekend, he's lucky he had that bar in there. So I think that helped save him. Definitely made him safer. So things do come, out of bad situations. Some things do come good out of them. So hopefully, I don't know if they have a R&D center for those kind of cars like Eric was trying to say. Do they upgrade them or not? I don't know, but
I would hope so, especially being NASCAR sanctioned or through INX. So we'll see what comes of it. But like you said, very sad news, and I just it sucks. It sucks for a lot of people involved.
Me being involved in the modified tour and the Goodales being from Riverhead, and half of the modified tour people are from Riverhead now. I didn't know that guy personally, but I'm sure I know people that know him personally, and it sucks for them, and I wish them all the best through this hard time.
Yeah. So with that, much longer show than I expected it to be tonight. But we had some great. Yeah, we'll blame Eric. Never fails. If you can't blame the spotter, blame Eric.
Always.
We had a lot of great conversation tonight. We're gonna be back next week, next Monday. Looking forward to talking about Dover and whatever went down at Wall Stadium or Bowman Gray.
Is Wall Stadium have anything special going on this weekend?
May the 4th. It's their Star Wars night.
It should be, May the 4th. That'd be cool.
So wear your Stormtrooper costume. Eric has his Princess Leia costume.
All ready to go. Just need to do the hair.
Yeah. Get some Cinnabons. So it should be a good show. I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably be there. It's just going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to see you guys again next week right here. So with that, we're going to move along to what have we learned today. I'm going to start with Tim.
I really didn't learn too. I learned that Eric Brennan actually made 2 shows in a row. Hopefully, he keeps that up.
Going for a record.
In all seriousness, it's really good to be back. I mean, honestly, and I'm Josh. We're very public about this. Sometimes we fight like brothers, and it takes me a little bit to get over it because I'm kind of a diva. And if you still had that diva crown, I'd put it on, even though I'm about 600 miles away. In the interim, moving sucked. It's a lot harder than it looks, kids. So think twice before getting up and moving a few more states south. But if you're following your dreams, I encourage you to do it. I did, in fact, get involved in another side venture that I'm working with, and that's it's a Hot Laps podcast hosted by Phil Ellis, who lives down in Florida and works in NASCAR. He's covering the Florida scene. Mikey Montano chimes in with some New York stuff, and it's nice. I don't drive the ship there. I just kind of get to chime in with my little anecdotes every now and then, if I'm using that word correctly. So that's something else we got going on. But I love the RPM podcast. We bred it since 2014, or I think it was, Josh, or 15, and
Something like that.
We got a really good group going, and Timmy and Scott, they've been an incredible addition. Sam needs to finish up with school. That way he can come back, and Josh just continues to amaze us with the production of this whole thing. So,
By the way, Sam's job this weekend at NASCAR at the Stafford was he was the pit gate guy. He opened the pits gate.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well,
I mean, he's a good greeter, so that would help.
Great. So he has a future at Walmart.
We all do.
That's
the end game for all of them.
So what did you learn, Eric?
I actually learned that depending on where you read, Red Farmer is 87, but if you look on Wikipedia, it's got a question mark and it says disputed, and it gives you a range from 1928 to 1932.
Yeah, so, apparently that's one of his things that he'll never admit how old he is.
Yeah, that's hysterical. I also learned a lot about Kevin Flores, who I knew the name. Obviously, I know the Flores family. And Ryan has helped, just as Ryan has helped Kevin out a lot. Ryan has done so much for me since I moved down here. Even though we don't talk that often, and that's because he's a father and a husband first, and then of course all his racing ventures and the business he's trying to get off the ground, and he still finds the time to reach out and make sure that I'm doing okay. But Kevin just seems to be like that passion for racing runs in the family blood. Learned a lot about him. So
their whole family is wonderful. When Bailey first started racing, and Kevin actually mentioned it when he was on the air, that Ryan was very vocal about the safety with the seats and stuff. Mm-hmm. Ryan actually bought Bailey's helmet for her.
Wow.
He would be, and the Flores they're all great fabricators and everything else, except for Scooter. He don't do much, but they are.
He gets you to the races, so that's important.
He's our number one critic on this. He'll be calling me first thing in the morning when it's up. So
hey, I remembered to delete the files, so so we had plenty of room. There's...
You know what? It's funny that you say that because this morning, I guess it was, we did that show. That was yesterday, right?
Yeah.
This morning he called me. He asked me. He goes, "Did that guy delete the file this time? Or are we going to have the full show?" I'm like, "Yes, Scooter. He's okay now."
And then I remember before tonight's show too. So I'm on a roll.
Sorry, Eric. I kind of interrupted you there.
Oh, I think I was done. So I didn't learn that much. So I just talked an awful lot. But it is good to be back. Thank you guys for the opportunity. I'm glad we have the ability to do this. And if my schedule allows, I'll be free on Monday nights. So
good. We hope that works out. And just to wrap things up here, today I learned that Kevin Flores got lucky with Eric. I learned that AJ is a bald. Well, that's why I said. I learned that AJ is a bald midget with a heart of gold. I learned that Kevin drives the rotten banana. I learned that Billy has a notebook, but Scott doesn't. I learned that Eric's relationship is so strong because he only listens to podcasts instead of talking to Haley. And I learned that Eric offended an entire nation.
I did. Azerbaijan. So, which sounds like it rhymes with something, but I don't know if I could say it or if I even know what it is, but I'll think about that. Also, I learned...
One thing I want to say before we get off there is, anyone, you guys talk about this show and everything, and you guys fight and you bicker and blah, blah, blah. But anybody that watches, poor Josh set up for 3.5 hours yesterday for us to do an hour and 20-minute show. Like, you know what I mean? He spends more time doing the behind-the-scenes stuff than the show actually is. And he's teaching that to my daughters, and they're all into it, and that's really cool that Josh takes the time to do that, and he does so much hard work on the show that people don't see. So, just wanted to mention that.
I mean, for example, we're wrapping this thing up at nearly 10:40 p.m. Eastern time, and Josh is going to try to have this thing uploaded for your morning drive, and on Tuesday. So that's, and Josh, again, I love you all the time. I only hate you sometimes, but I respect you 1,000% for everything you do.
We're going to get deep here, guys.
We are, and we're spooning. So
Eric Brennan brings out the emotional part in every show.
Yes, he does.
I'm an emotional butterfly. So I'm gonna go hug my dog now, little Sammy.
All right, take us out, Eric.
All right. Well, on behalf of Scott Riggleman, who's now on the disabled list to try to heal up the pipes after all his hard work these last 2 days, he'll be back next Monday. He'll be back in the race car this weekend. Tim Riggleman, of course, who's been absolutely amazing. Also, want to give a shout out again to Alexis and Bailey after their hard work over the weekend, and they're also the assistant producers in training. So I'm looking forward to that. And the aforementioned producer Josh, who has just hit a home run for the second day in a row. I'm Eric Brennan. Great to be back. We'll see you all next time on the RPM podcast. Good night, everybody.
Go to Wall.
Go to Wall.